Hi everybody, thank you so much for tuning into this video, and also thank you to Sky, who is today's special guest. Sky is a new tutor with the company that I run, My Ivy Education, where we do tutoring and academic consulting, college help, basically everything that you might need as a high school student. And we've just brought Sky on, which is so exciting because today he's going to make a video with me and we're going to talk all about his journey with applying to Stanford and also how he can help you guys out. So, Sky, do you want to introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll get into a ton of questions?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Krystle, for having me film this with you today. My name is Sky No, as she said, and I graduated from the Davidson Academy of Nevada here in Reno, Nevada. I was born and raised here, and I'm currently taking kind of like a gap year. It's a little longer than a gap year, but some time away from going to college to pursue a business that I started with a couple friends.
Yes, it's gonna be amazing. And one thing that I was wondering, since ED deadlines are literally tomorrow, we're filming this on Halloween, hence
Yeah.
we've got some good spooky vibes in the background with the Princeton and Yale flags. Kind of love that. But since that deadline is coming up, how did you decide whether to apply early decision or regular decision to Stanford?
Yeah, that's a good question because I remember when I was applying, I had known I was pretty good friends with a lot of people who had previously, like the year before and the year before that, applied to college. Um, and I like for the long because I never really thought too much about college, to be honest, until like I had to. And to be honest, I had like always kind of felt that all of my friends and all these people who were applying early or not had some sort of like strategy to like I heard one person like applied early to a college that maybe that wasn't their first choice, but then they did it for some strategy, and that might be valid. But for me personally, I decided, well, I'm just going to apply early to my favorite college, and I'm lucky to say that I had a favorite college. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to apply early to Stanford, and I didn't really care that much about statistics or anything like that. I just wanted to finish that app first. So pretty simple answer, but that's what it was.
I mean, I think that's so important. It breaks my heart when students who I work with feel like they have to apply to a college that's not their dream school early. I was just working with a student in that same situation where she was really worried because multiple kids from her school were applying to the same ED college that she wanted to go to. And I think you're absolutely right that it should be about where you want to go and not just trying to game the system. So I'm so happy that was your experience. And actually, that segues so nicely into getting a sense of why was Stanford your dream school, and also what is your intended major?
Yeah. So I have like for a long time been going to like the Stanford area because I have a lot of family that lives in the Bay Area. So I was always like familiar with that area, and I always had sort of like a liking for Stanford campus and all that. But again, I didn't really know too much about like the specifics of college and academics until much later. So I remember like actually when I first came to the DA, they do this thing for all the new students where an advisor like interviews you about like random stuff. And I was in like seventh grade at the time, and she was like, "Where do you want to go to college?" And I was like, "Stanford." And she was like, "Okay, do you know anything about Stanford?" I was like, "Nope." So I chose that. And I actually, throughout my high school, wanted to go to very different places. There was a time when I really, really, really wanted to go to Columbia. Um, I still think it's really cool. There's a time, all these different schools, but finally, I kind of like right before I had to apply was like, okay, Stanford. And to be honest, there's a few like metric reasons. One is, well, okay, the weather is really nice, but aside from that, I actually did enjoy their quarter system. I know a lot of people might not want that, but throughout my experience in high school personally, I was kind of the person who wanted to like explore a bunch of different topics that I was interested in, some of which might be kind of like unorthodox. And I felt like Stanford really offered a really good like environment for that, not just in terms of culture, but in terms of like being able to take a ton of different classes per quarter. And when I looked at their class offerings, especially in some of the areas that I was interested in, so I guess to answer the second part of your question, I honestly don't really know what I'm going to major in, but I am definitely very interested in East Asia culture, history, philosophies, as well as business and entrepreneurship. Um, And when I looked at some of the other like options that were really high on my list, most of which were semester schools, I was like, okay, these courses look really cool, but the courses at Stanford sort of really spoke to me because it would be things like how like some like business philosophy, for example, I don't really remember, but in like the 21st century relates to like the Meiji era, like in 1800s and 1900s, like of Japan and things like that. And I thought that that combination was really cool. So that, along with sort of this comfort of Stanford, led me to apply. I did, however, feel like maybe I don't want to apply somewhere where I'm comfortable like living, but seeing those class options and all that kind of stuff really pointed me in that direction. So yeah.
Yeah, different people have different opinions on whether you should do school close to home or far away. Personally, I'm also in that kind of close to home camp. I think we both are out of college that's basically one state over from our home state. Like,
Yeah.
I'm from New Jersey and go to Columbia and New York, well, during non-coronavirus times.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I will say you did miss out on our winters, which is probably a good thing. It can get kind of cold there, but I think the weather is going to be pretty fabulous. But you
Yeah.
mentioned how you had those really cool intersecting interests, and that's something that you also pursued a lot in high school, right? With your
Yeah.
activities that you did. And I feel like you even kind of went beyond the traditional extracurricular activities idea that a lot of people have, which is maybe more just unfortunately focused towards getting into college as opposed to pursuing your true passions and interests. But I feel like you kind of went the opposite way. So I'd love if you could kind of tell our viewers more about that and kind of what activities and classes you did in high school that A, were really all about your passions and what you're interested in, and B, if you think that in any way they helped in the admissions process. And oftentimes those two go really well together, right? If you show that you have that passion and you dive really deeply into it, colleges love to see it. So yeah, what kinds of things did you do in high school?
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting area to talk about because again, like so when I went to the DA, there's a lot of different kinds of people there, all of whom are really cool people. But I knew a lot of people who, ever since I can remember, were really kind of thinking about college the entire time. And that's bound to happen anywhere. And I think that's it makes sense. That's totally fine. And I think I was almost like lucky in a way to like kind of be the type of kid who just didn't want to care about it for a while. And that led me to really like uh, naturally sort of like really easily without reluctance pursue the things that I wanted to without really thinking about the college because um, I just didn't care about it as much. So in that way, I was lucky. But even for people who do think about college a lot from years before you apply, I do think that like sort of well, okay, I guess to start with the basics, what I did was all the standard classes and whatever that I had to for high school. But another thing that I was lucky about was that the DA is connected to the University of Nevada, Reno. And so technically when you go there, you get a Wolf card. So you're like a UNR student on paper. And if you want to, you can take classes at UNR and use their facilities and things like that. And once I was able to look through their course catalogs and find the really like non-high school kind of things that they were teaching, like Japanese studies. I remember during the summer, I also took like a culture class, and the professors there often are quite good. Like the best class I've ever taken was an East Asian history class with Professor Hugh Shapiro, the coolest guy on the planet. So those options were also available, and I was just like, okay, this is like academic and also related to my interest, so I could do that. I don't want to say that what other people are doing is like incorrect or anything, because I'm sure there's a variety of ways to approach this. But from personal experience, I know, for example, in high school, a lot of people would try to do debate and DECA and like science Olympiad and whatnot. And I think if that's like your thing, that's okay. But for me personally, I tried debate for a little bit and I really didn't like it. And I was like, what do I want to dedicate my time to? So I chose DECA. Um, and I actually did like it. But it requires that like beginning phase of trying a bunch of different things. I think I've been in like most of the clubs at the DA, but when I found the thing that I did like, then I kind of got the feel for like, okay, maybe I don't like this part of it, but I do like this part of it. And compared to the other things, this is the one thing that I think I can actually genuinely delve deep into, because as Krystle said, I think it's important to like, for colleges, for example, to see like, if you find something that you're genuinely passionate about, you really pursue it. So I did DECA. Later on, I became the chapter president for the DA. I tried as hard as I could at the competitions, and kind of seeing that progression is only really, I guess it's more easily possible if you're genuinely passionate about that subject. So, instead of trying to force myself to do debate and like get really good at it, which maybe I could have tried to do, it was just a lot more sort of like synthesized with the rest of my portfolio, doing business related things in East Asia and like starting my own card game business back in like 8th grade, to just pursue DECA. So there was that. And that's kind of like the school related extracurriculars. I did mention like the card game business, which is not really a school related extracurricular, but sort of looking into my local community and seeing what programs interested me was also really beneficial. Just because, and that was even before high school. Just because I wanted to try things again, like try a bunch of different stuff. But Garage Sofa Games, which is my card game company, I ended up being really passionate about. So I did that throughout high school as well. And, kind of pursuing these different things in different areas, but going with the thing that I actually liked, ended up giving me a couple different interests that, even though like seemingly unrelated, like East Asia and like business, like history and stuff, I could eventually find a way to connect that. So I don't know. This was kind of like a storytelling type response, but I hope it's helpful.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. I mean, I think that's so enlightening. It also reminds me of like, did you ever read that one Atlantic article? It came out a couple years ago. It talks about how we really think about passions kind of backwards as a society, in kind of a backwards manner, because we kind of think it's like, oh, you just find something and you want to do it all the time. But that's not exactly how it is. There might be parts that are really difficult. The mark of a passion is you're willing to work through them, even if it really sucks and you're kind of, bemoaning the whole way through it. And so I feel like what you're saying makes so much sense and is really helpful for people to hear, because I know, in working through my IB education, working with so many students, we come across so many kids who are amazing, but who truly think that they have to go into a certain field, maybe because a family member's in that or something like that, or it's just expected of them. And they think that's their passion, but it's so clear that they're really into and invested in something else. So I'm so happy you had those experiences and could try things out. So important, I think, for people to hear. So yeah, no worries. That was amazing. We want to hear all the rambles.
Okay.
People are
Cool.
going to love it.
All right.
And this is kind of a little bit of a segue, but also a slightly different turn in what we're talking about right now. So I was also wondering, how did you decide what to write your application essays about? For Stanford, they have a lot of those little supplement essays, lots of 50-word essays, and a couple of slightly longer essays. And then, of course, the Common App personal statement, which I know tons of people as we speak are literally scrambling to finish up right now for AD deadlines tomorrow. But yeah, how did you choose what to write about? And if you want to talk about anything that you did write about that you felt stood out, that would be amazing.
Yeah. So for the Common App, which I made sure to finish, like, I had been told from like older people, like, just do it in the summer or something like that. I didn't do it in the summer, but I did it like as early as possible. That was kind of an interesting journey because I forgot what exact prompt I did. It was like, I ended up talking about my first time being alone abroad in Japan. And I was like 15 at the time when that happened. And
Wow.
even though like I was already like 18 or 17, almost 18 by the time that I was writing my Common App, I still thought about that experience like every day. And I think like, forget about the app. If I were to just like tell myself, oh, let's do some like journaling, I would have ended up talking about it anyway. And so I was like, I think that is a good indicator that this is something that I have a lot to say about. So what I ended up doing with that is looking at kind of my two diverging interests being like East Asia, especially Japan. alongside like business and entrepreneurship, which still at the time seemed like pretty unrelated to me. And I was like, which one of these says more about me for my personal statement? So I ended up talking about Japan. And it was kind of like a personal development story about how I went there and I didn't know anything. And there was this picturesque scene that's true. I still remember it, where there's a place called Asuke, and like it's like famous because it has a lot of like red bridges that are really beautiful. And we went there like with my host family. We went there for like a day, and it was like misty and nobody was there. And I took like a step onto the bridge, and I used that like sort of as a um, like as a device within my essay to say that that was taking a new step. And I it was weird because I had people like I'd written a bunch of drafts. I had like people who were like friends, family, and like the counselor like read it and give me like comments. Moving on to the Stanford specific supplements, I noticed maybe like because I had some sort of image of Stanford being like a somewhat unorthodox place. I noticed their prompts kind of allowed for a lot of creativity compared with some of the other prompts that I had seen. And I was just like, I'm probably not going to get in, so I'm just going to experiment with it and like be as creative with it as possible, and have fun with it. I mean, it wasn't fun all the time, but like for example, I remember one of their prompts was like in your free, like something about what do you like read and watch and like listen to in your free time. Um, and so instead of saying like I read this, I read that, which was kind of my draft, like to get the ideas down, I thought, okay, maybe like the meta level delivery of this also matters, because if they want to see like what kind of student I'm going to be, I'm going to try to show them rather than tell them. So I remember for that response, instead of saying like I like to listen to this or whatever, I said like read, and then a bunch of things that finished that sentence. So like I don't remember what it was, but it was like probably like read between the lines, comma, like uh, whatever book I liked, comma, like my face in the mirror. I mean, I didn't say that, but like kind of really creative sort of things like that. I remember, oh yeah, I remember for the hearing thing. One thing I was like, I listen to others' advice, but also sometimes not others' advice, things like that. So I decided, I'll be I'll be fun and quirky with it, because I feel like not just because Stanford might like that and be okay with it, but because I honestly didn't know what else to say that wouldn't bore myself. Like I read this book and that book and that book. So yeah, that's kind of like the overarching like creativity that I wanted to put into my essay, so that it was personal to me and that I liked it. So even if it wasn't good for college apps or whatever, I would look at it and be like, oh, I really liked that I wrote this when I was at that age. So that's what I did for that. But I guess in terms of like what I actually wrote about, I found a way to combine sort of East Asian studies and business through, I think it was the idea of like communication, because it's really important in both areas. And I was really lucky because the summer before, like between junior and senior year, I was able to work at a startup in Japan. So that was kind of like learning the business culture and how to speak and things like that, but also looking at what it's like to be inside of a startup. And that all comes from sort of the very beginning back in like middle school and so on, like just going out on a leg and trying to like ask for and do the things that I wanted to do. You might have a high like failure rate of people like not responding to you or whatever, but for that I was really lucky, because eventually I'd sort of realized, oh, I like Asia and I like business. And I knew someone who was part of this business in the States, and I was like, okay, well, I like business, but unfortunately I can't get an internship or a position in the States, but I like Japan. And I was like, is there a Japan branch? And he was like, yeah. I was like, can I go to the Japan branch? And that worked.
I think a few things you said are so, so important. I mean, all of it, but especially what stood out to me was how you kind of framed writing your essays around what would you just naturally start writing anyway? What would you gravitate to? I don't think that's something that a lot of people would maybe think of immediately. And I feel like that's such a fresh way to approach it. So Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I feel like if people are going to take anything away from this, that is huge right there. And then also, like you said, just having that exploration, and I feel like you were being really curious and inquisitive, like when you asked, is there a Japan branch, and not being afraid to pursue that. So I feel like that's also something really important for people to follow. But yeah, I feel like that's huge, the way you approached it. And you said quirky at one point. That is the word that I always use with like students who I'm helping for applying to Stanford. Just Stanford is that school where
Yeah.
if you're not going all out, then don't even bother, because that's what they're going to want to see. So it all kind of comes together, right, with the passions, and you pursue them authentically, and then you write about them authentically, true to you as opposed to what you think the school wants. And that's actually the approach that tends to be
Yeah.
the best. It's kind of nice. It has that sort of meritocratic feeling, or like if you're being authentic, that's being rewarded. So I feel like that's such a bright spot in the midst of college admissions, which can sometimes be a little bit, like, oh, do what the
Yeah.
college wants instead of what you want.
I think like I guess one thing that I would add to that point is like I, I had no idea whether college apps were like a really genuine process or not, because it just seems like, to be completely honest, it just doesn't seem that genuine. It's like describe yourself in like 650 words. And to a degree there's like artistry to it. But after like looking through all the different stuff and talking to people, um, like who I know, and all that kind of stuff, like I think I kind of came to this conclusion where it's like I'm gonna try to express like what I'm interested in. Uh, I can't describe like my life in like 600 words, but like the way that I wrote it and what I decided to talk about, kind of, it's like having a conversation with me. And if I'm having a conversation with a person who's reading my essay, it's not about like do they like me or not. It's like kind of this is how I act. If the school doesn't like me, I probably wouldn't have really been very happy there. And and I guess the second point is like there's so many elements to your app. So from things like test scores and whatever, which but also like the activities that you did, the way that you described your activities, to like the 650 word personal statement, which it's not long, but it's still 650 words of your voice. All of these different elements are going to be read by the admissions counselor or admissions personnel like quite quickly, like in, like less than 20 minutes. I don't know. And they see like thousands of those, and they're really good at getting like an image and an impression from that. And if you're not being that authentic, this was my thought, and there was like one thing that was like different from the rest. So let's say I pursued something in high school that I didn't actually really care about, but I kind of forced myself to make it look glamorous. That would actually stand out from the picture, and that might actually work against me, as opposed to me just saying, okay, this is what I am, and if it's not enough, then I probably wouldn't have been happy at your school anyway. So that's sort of one way that I started to view it after a while.
Yeah, I feel like that also gets into how a lot of people feel like colleges look for well-rounded students who, like you said at the very beginning, do DECA and debate and science Olympiad, but they don't want well-rounded students. They want a well-rounded class of students who are pursuing their passions, whether that's just one or two specific things. So it sounds like you were kind of that more spiked applicant, as we say. And so that was super helpful for getting that picture of your essays. And I was also wondering, did you have an interview for Stanford? And if so, how did you prepare? What was the experience like? Do you have any advice? If not, that's totally fine too.
Yeah, I did have an interview. Yeah, I did. We went to like a local coffee place in Reno. They say the interview doesn't harm you or doesn't help you or harm you, really. It's to learn about the school. And instead of trying to, again, sort of like with the app, like read between the lines, which I'm sure there's stuff that you could find, but I was like, well, this is like a guaranteed, like obligatory conversation that this alum, who's obviously passionate about the school, has to have with me. Um, so this person's probably interesting. I think she worked like in some high tech thing, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. And she was from like not Reno, somewhere close, and I was like, uh, she's probably an interesting person. So I've done my research like on the website and whatever of what Stanford offers. I'm just going to view this as like a regular conversation with an interesting person. And that's what it was. We didn't just talk about Stanford. We talked about like a bunch of random stuff. Um, she and she was an interesting person. I asked about her, she asked about me. It was just like a regular conversation. But with the Stanford sort of like theme around it, I was also able to ask her like more specific things. And this probably depends on who's interviewing you. Like I bet there's some people who are more formal, more informal. But with her, it was totally chill to just ask like, what did you not like? Like, and there were some things, and just being really frank about it and just treating it like a regular conversation with a cool person rather than an interview, really helped me out.
Yeah, and I think that also goes to show how different the interviews are for each college. That's super helpful for people to have a sense that Stanford, it's for you to get to know about the college. For
Yeah,
Columbia, where I go, I didn't have an interview and I got in, so it worked for me. I know a lot
yeah,
of people stress about that if they're not offered an interview. For Harvard, it's kind of like the test of would you want to sit next to this person in the dining hall. So each college is super different, and that's super helpful to get a sense of how it works for Stanford. And that really just leads me to pretty much my last question, which is just was there anything when you were undergoing the application process that made you think, it seems like this is what Stanford is looking for from a student? And in your opinion, of course, since you can never know 100% for sure, but what do you think it was about your application and you as a student that Stanford liked and helped get them to accept you?
yeah. So again, there's sort of that like within their prompts ability to really mold it and make it creative. And it's like in applying to a bunch of different colleges, I sort of had this image of each college. I'd visited them, I'd done some programs associated with them, and talked to people who are affiliated with them. Um, and I think like as I was actually filling out the app, there was definitely like some like glaring differences between different places. Like some would be like Stanford's would have these like kind of really open-ended prompts. There was some um, that were like really not open. It was like list 3 books that you've read like in the last 6 months, and it's like okay, there's nothing I can do except list that. Uh, and like I think like as I was writing it and I got a feel for it, it was kind of like a when you're writing these apps, it's a living text. It's not like you write it once. Um, I would just like start writing something, even if it's like not what I'm gonna put, and just put it there, and then keep your relationship with your application really evolves like on a personal level. And I think this is something that a lot of people say is like you learn a lot about yourself, a lot about the school, whatnot. Um, And I think by the end, it became a lot less about the school that I was going to and more about like wherever I go. Because, at the end, all of my apps had been submitted. Um, like, I'm just going to make the best of it because I felt like I was maybe the kind of person who would be able to do that. I don't know. Like, for example, like when I was choosing Stanford, right? I was like, oh, it's nice and whatnot. But ultimately, like, if I'm taking classes and I'm going to be spending most of my time on campus anyway, which sort of relates to like the location, like California versus whatever. And I was like thinking about all these different factors, but eventually I think the biggest factor of all is you, the applicant. No matter which college you go to and wherever that is, uh, you yourself and how you make that college experience yours is like 90% of it, and then like 10% of it is the college. Uh, I haven't calculated that, but for me, that was my personal philosophy after I was kind of done with it all. Um, so, what I would like to say about like why I got in is I think maybe a little bit of that showed. There's a little bit of that like irreverence in there, especially when it came to like the Stanford app, where it's like eventually I was like, okay, I don't even care. I'm just gonna write what I want to write. But I think Stanford kind of might like that in people because they're like an entrepreneur school and whatnot. So that also helped. But I think sort of for Stanford specifically in my app, it was sort of that okay, I'm gonna do what I want. Um, I I guess I also like business and I have experience with that, but I'm going to do what I want. So I think maybe one of the things was kind of like the sense that I had the initiative to kind of do things that weren't dictated by Stanford itself that helped me. I think for everybody, because everybody's different and everybody has an interesting story. You just have to find it. Kind of seeing that within yourself is going to help. And if that's not compatible with Stanford or the specific school that you're looking for, it'll be compatible somewhere. So yeah, that's kind of my broad response, but hopefully that is helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you're not trying to give one size fits all advice, right? I think that makes it so much more helpful for applicants. You know, if you tried to say, oh, this is exactly what I did that got me into Stanford, that may be kind of sus. But I feel like what you're saying is so authentic. And it seems like in the process, you were trying to just be really authentic. Or, might be kind of an oxymoron to say trying to be authentic, but you were authentic in the process. And it seems like that is something that Stanford really does look for. I totally agree with you there. Obviously, I'm not a Stanford student, but have done a lot of work with that. I actually went to Stanford Online High School, which you know, Scott, I think.
Yeah.
And that idea of like quirkiness and authenticity is just so deeply rooted through their whole academia. And I can totally see how it is that situation where that was a school that maybe you and only you could bring something special to, and they and only they could give you that environment that you were looking for. So yeah, I think you're completely right when you say maybe if there's a school that someone's looking at that doesn't have that exact synergy, that's okay. Maybe it's not the school for you, but there will be a school out there that has that exact synthesis that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sky. Those are all the questions that I have right now. But yeah, just to once again reiterate, Sky is working with us right now. So if you guys, subscribers, or anyone watching this video, want to talk with Sky, he's doing a lot of things like helping people with DECA and kind of entrepreneurship and business activities especially, also certain kinds of tutoring. Do you want to say anything more about that, or do you want me to?
I guess the only thing I would add is just reach out. I do specialize in those areas.
And also Japanese, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. But you know, if I don't exactly know what people are looking for, but if you thought that this was helpful or interesting, I'm down to talk with anybody about whatever you think I would be able to be helpful with. Not just based on what I've said, but anything with the intersection of business, East Asian culture, or just going to the DA if you're interested about that. So yeah, I'll leave it to you from here.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyone who wants to talk to Sky should definitely email us at info@myibeducation.org. I'll put it right up on the screen. Definitely get in touch with us. Sky is here to help you guys. We all are. So, check out our website with our team page. You can see all the different people who are here who want to help you guys out. We've been through it. I know it's crazy. You guys must be freaking out right now since like literally October 31st. But happy Halloween, everybody. Thank you again, Sky, for joining me today. And yeah, this is going to be really great, guys. Don't hesitate to reach out. No need to reinvent the wheel when you've got us. So once again, please be sure to subscribe to the channel if you like this video and give it a like. Put on that notification bell so that you get notified every time I post. Hopefully we'll be seeing Sky again soon. But thanks again, everyone. Love you all. Bye.
Thank you.